Sonia at 7:30, so. Yeah. Yeah, and I think they were maybe 7, 10. So I took a picture of them. I did 10th grade. Back in the day. So let me take a picture. Please do that. Yeah. I've seen online from across with like a Korean teacher at some building. There's Sonia, whose child is going to go there yet. She'll be going next year. So yeah. So we had fun. I know. I don't know how many. Sonia wasn't on the list of schools that I saw at least. So. No, they're scarves. They have scarves. I have scarves. I know. People wear that. Come on. Standard Wednesday wear. Right. Pink on. You pink on? I just checked it. Yeah, it's a little pink. Right. I mean, yep.
What? You're dark as me. What's going on?
I know, I'm Dominican.
Oh, that. Do I look tan? I was in D.C.
You do. Was it pretty bright there?
It was 64 degrees.
Well, that's
There were
warmer than
flowers that were real on the
Go ahead
city.
and start. Yes. Call to order. Todd, are you doing that?
Thank you. Dr. Maher's out of town, obviously, at a conference. Deb Mullenberg Wilson is going to provide us with the preschool update today. I'll turn it over to her.
Good afternoon. We're glad that you've asked to hear more about early childhood. So our focus today will be our youngest learners in the district. So why would a district want to have early childhood? Was my first question as I tried to think about what questions you might have for me. So you'll note that in our strategic plan under student outcomes is where early childhood would fall in our scope of practice. But if you look at national research about early childhood, we know that brain research would document that about 85% of a child's core brain structure is formed by their third birthday. So those years, there are a lot of important things happening in the development of children that lead to student outcomes in a K-12 structure. We also know that there's documented research of the lifelong positive effects of children who have had a quality early childhood experience. Things such as higher graduation rates, higher rates of job retention, less incarceration, and other social service kinds of issues. So the Sioux Falls School District has a long, rich history of early childhood, and I can joke when I say I felt like a historian putting this together, and another person of a similar age range of me said, yeah, she feels that way some days too. So in 1967, the district received its first federal Head Start grant. It was 2 years after the act was passed in DC, and so the district was in the early years of Head Start in our country. In 1976 is when we started our early childhood special ed programming. And for many years, they ran very separate from each other. They didn't interface. If you had a child with a disability and a child eligible for Head Start, 2 different buses stopped at your house to pick you up at that point in our history. In 1999, then Superintendent Jack Keegan said we would be embarking on a study of early childhood in our district. And that went on 99 through 2001, where we studied our delivery, what it looked like, how we taught, what we taught. It was very comprehensive. And it was also in that time zone that most of our early childhood program was housed at South Sioux, which was a school on 41st Street, now the Volkswagen dealer. And it was in 2001, Jeff helped me to see, that's when we tore that building down. And that's when we moved to neighborhood sites for our early childhood programming. In 2001, we implemented the high scope early childhood curriculum, which is probably one of the most researched curriculum in our country. In 2003, the school board made a decision to start to commit Title I funding to support more early childhood in our district. In August of 2007, the governor's office and a group of business leaders in our city asked us to run a research project about early childhood. We were the provider and the coordinator of it. The research was done out of USD by a research team down there. And you'll hear people talk about that as starting strong. That went on for 3 years. Then in 2012, the district made a decision to include migrant funding in our early childhood scheme. In 2013, then Board President Morrison was in California and learned about a program they were doing that he brought back called Ready to Start, which the Sioux Empire United Way funded, and we began. In 2013, Deanne and her group started learning Foundations, which is a tuition-based preschool option. And then in 2014, the United Way worked with us to start the Preschool Opportunity Program. So that gives you the 10,000-foot view of a long history of early childhood in our district through a variety of means. So who do we serve in early childhood? In some states in our country, you would see what's called universal pre-K, where public schools are just an extension. Kindergarten now is, there's 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. That is not who we are. Learning Adventures with that paid tuition for 4- and 5-year-olds could be anyone, but all of our other program strands are driven by a targeted risk area. So our birth to 3 youngsters have identified disabilities. In our 3- and 4-year-old programming, we're a grantee of a federal Head Start grant. So that target is all children who live in poverty. Title I funds go to children with developmental risk factors and live in catchment areas of poverty. The migrant grant is for children with risk factors whose parents work in select agricultural professions. And then the special ed arm, of course, are children with developmental disabilities. The POP program is designed for children who are on the waiting list of Head Start. So again, a targeted group. So our niche in the early childhood role is very targeted. So how do parents know about early childhood? The district website and K-Learn are supportive in sharing information. School offices give parents a lot of information about how to find us. Probably a source that maybe you don't know as much is the number of referrals we get from medical and doctor's offices. They have our number memorized and are sending us kids. Governmental offices also refer a lot of kids to us. So the WIC office, social services, TANF, send us a lot of families. And then our family service staff go to community agencies and events. So you'll see them at the banquet. You'll see them at events around young children where they'll have a booth to get information to parents. And then there's always parents just sharing information with parents is a source. So our program's framework starts at the Screen and Eval office, which is currently housed at Central Services, where clerical staff are taking calls for people asking about early childhood. It's where Principal Boysen would have given them that number if somebody came to their school. It's really the start of early childhood in our district. Parents can get developmental screenings at no cost. You don't have to be worried that you have a risk factor. If you just want to know how your child's development's going, you can call there, have a screen at no cost. The office runs all year round. They're willing to go out to sites to screen if there's a group of kids and they have parent permission. They run some night screenings to help parents who are working during the day. If you have developmental risk factors come up in that screen, there are recheck processes. If those would persist, then the evaluators are right there on site, so you can come back to have your full eval at the same location. We screen from birth through 5. So we have some children who are in that birth through 2 range that may be identified as having a developmental disability, and then we move those into birth to 3 services. We work cooperatively with the state interagency group, and the ones who receive service by us are those with the most significant disabilities. Our 3 to 5-year-olds.
And those services go in home?
Yes. Yes. The way the federal statute's written is in natural environments. So we would go into homes. In some situations, we may go into a daycare, or sometimes a parent doesn't feel comfortable with us in their home, so we might meet them at a community location. Yes, but they are not in school classrooms. So the 3 to 5 model, the majority of our preschoolers are in what we call blended classrooms. So when we left and they tore down South Sioux, we moved into a model where instead of having a Head Start site and a special ed site, you now went to your neighborhood school, and we have a structure on the back side that Mr. Veek designed, and I implemented, and Val implemented, and now Elizabeth Jahanberry implements, where kids go to their neighborhood school, they're blended into classrooms, the funding mechanism is all on the back side. So if you went and visited one of those rooms, you don't know who's funded how, but you're just at your neighborhood school. So those are our blended classrooms. Because of the nature of special ed in a community like Sioux Falls, we also have some specialized classrooms. Those are children whose disability is so severe that they wouldn't be able to benefit in a blended classroom. Maybe they can't handle the activity level, maybe they don't have the communication skills yet, but they need some pretty intense specialized instruction. So we have 5 of those half-day sessions in our continuum of classrooms. We have 1 Head Start extended day program. The federal government has had some notion about wanting Head Start to be all day as opposed to half days. They, up till this point, have never had any money to support that, so you would have to cut your enrollment down in order to do that. So we have been slow to get on that curve because we know we have so many kids who already don't get in. So we did go out and run 1 extended day where 17 Head Start youngsters go all day, and they go longer in the school year. And we're collecting some data on growth so that we can have a articulate conversation with the feds about the impact of doing that. The Preschool Opportunity Program is over here at Robert Thrust. It uses many of the same principles as our early childhood classrooms, but does not have the support services aligned to support some of the specialized needs of children. And then the Learning Adventure group runs a similar schedule to everyone else in early childhood. And they're teaching.
Can you remind me how many spots now are we reduced because of the all-day, extended day?
Yeah, we didn't reduce.
Okay.
We worked it around to make that pilot happen. But if we were to
So we're
go,
still serving the same amount of kids we were before.
that's correct.
Thank you.
So here's where all of these program options are. You'll see that many of our locations come across the north part of the city right now, because that's where the greatest targeted risk areas are by our funding streams currently. So that's what it looks like visually. So how many kids are impacted? So in 17-18, we did 1,862 developmental screenings, and in 18-19, 1,791. Evaluations, you can see infants and toddlers, we evaluated 251 and then 258 the next year, and we did 217 3 to 5-year-olds and 181 the next year. So it's a busy, hopping place to do that many evals. Our program capacities, in birth to 3, you can't put a capacity because if a student's identified, we would have a responsibility to serve. This past December 1, which is the unduplicated count period in our state, we had 125. I'd say we've been between 120 and 130 for the last few years. Our 3 to 5 capacities, Head Start is funded at 414. Youth, Title I is funded at 217. 34 migrant eligible youngsters. And again, no capacity on the special ed end, but we were at 319 on December 1. The Preschool Opportunity Program has a capacity of 64, and Learning Adventures is 68 at the current time. As of this morning, not including Learning Adventures, there were 1,133 early childhood youngsters in our district.
That Learning Adventures, is that 68 per site or that 68 total?
Total.
And there's, so I see 3 sites?
John Harris, Celia Sotomayor, and Discovery. There's a morning session at John Harris and Discovery. There's a morning and an afternoon at Sonia Sotomayor.
Thank you.
So what do we do in early childhood? You know, our goal is to deliver a comprehensive child development program for those youngsters, focusing on language development, cognitive development, motor development, adaptive skills, and social and emotional skills. If you ask teachers today, compared to 15 years ago, they would probably talk more about increased needs of social and emotional needs of children. We do use a researched curriculum, and in our model, the curriculum is delivered by a certified teacher. So, given the federal directed parts of our program, we also have a nice group of support services that you might not see in a typical early childhood setting. The Head Start requirements include supports to families, nutrition services, transportation services, and health services. So the family service part, our family service staff are helping families maybe find housing, find resources for work, all those kinds of things. Our nutrition component that we're required to meet is we have to meet 2/3 of a child's daily nutrition needs in the time they're with us. So there's an enriched snack provided during their session, and there's also an enriched meal provided. And children are eating family style in their classroom, learning the social etiquette of that. Transportation is a service that's provided, although we encourage and work with families to work toward getting their children to school. Because if we just give them a ride when they're 4 and then they have to go to kindergarten, they have to get them to kindergarten. So we work hard with families to try to become more independent with that. And the health services, the Head Start grant requires that we assist families to make sure children get immunized and get their teeth checked and all of those kinds of services. If a child has an IEP, of course, then you have services like physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech language therapy, and school nurse services if they would be eligible for those. So, how do we know if students are making progress, which is what we need to be about? So this part of us isn't all that different than K-12. How we do it is different, but we still have systems in place to make sure kids are growing and developing. So all of our children, families are involved with home visits with our staff, where we're doing some mutual goal setting with parents on what we want their children to be doing, so that parents learn about that and can know what they're looking for at home. There are 3 of those visits during the year. One is focused strictly on literacy, which is an area we've seen need in our children's growth. So 3 times during the year, we have a progress monitoring system that teachers are entering notes about what children are doing in class, and then we capture those 3 times, and we actually track 15 developmental areas. So I put a couple examples up here from a year ago. One area is alphabetic knowledge, and so it's a 1 to 5 scale. So you can see there are the 3 periods in the year, and we're seeing that's our program as a whole. Kids are growing at those increments. We can look at it by student, we can look at it by classroom, and we can look at it as a program. But we try to see trends in areas we need to reconsider things in our curriculum, give more training to teachers on instructional principles, those kinds of things. So that's how we monitor in that and report to parents. Now you can't run a whole bunch of federal programs and not know you're going to have some quality reporting that you do. It's just the nature of the beast. So annually, We do a program self-evaluation that all staff are involved in different ways. I think Board Member Baker joined that group this year as your liaison to the Head Start Policy Council, where we really look at what we as a program are good at and things that we can be better at. We also do a needs assessment of our community that says what's going on with preschool in our community and what are the needs of our families in relation to that, and how do we interface in our community to support our families. That's a really great thing about our early childhood program is the many community partnerships that we have established. So we also have in place a process in which trained evaluators go and observe teachers a certain number of times a year and give them feedback. It's a little different than what you would see in K-12, because it's actually a formal system of evaluation. But it's a good way for us to have other eyes in classrooms to help teachers problem solve and grow. So the Federal Head Start Office has a process of desk audits, and they come on site a minimum of every 5 years to be in classrooms to see what we're doing to ensure quality is going on. And then a few weeks ago, you learned about self-initiating, participating in the South Dakota Preschool Levels of Excellence to, again, continue to challenge ourselves to get better and to raise our bar.
How does the South Dakota Preschool Levels of Excellence, what teeth do they have in it besides just oversight?
None.
Because the funding is not.
There's no funding hooked to it. It's all voluntary. And really, I think the power of it is in the self-reflection that you do going through the process. And so if you do that at a good level, you're asking yourself questions about how can you be better at this point on the framework, but they have no teeth at all.
I just want to make sure I've got this straight.
The teeth is in the bullet above it.
Right, it's really the federal funding, but the state of South Dakota has the levels of excellence for preschool, but there's no funding that is attached out for those levels of excellence.
That's correct. The teeth is in the federal monitoring, where they can decide if you have deficiencies, if you have to do corrective actions, if they could cease some of your funding. They have it, all that teeth there. In our last federal review, we had no findings at all. We anticipate next year we'll do an audit, and then they get ready and come back with them. So I think we've always approached that process as if there are things we can be better at, we want to be better at it. But we also don't want to be negligent in things we know we should be doing. So you have 1,825 days between a day a child's born and they get ready to go to kindergarten. Well, you can take 5 times 2. And so all of those days, preschoolers are soaking up a lot of information. And so what we deliver in our early childhood classrooms is really our way to help them soak up the most important things that will really help them be prepared to be a learner when they get to kindergarten. So, questions?
Deb, thank you to your team. I see Elizabeth. For all this information. It's just so important for our district with school readiness and for our students to allow them to be ready emotionally and mature level as well as academically to start school, and it helps our staff with behavioral issues and just other issues going in there. So what you guys are doing, even though the state of South Dakota doesn't fund it, is so important for our schools. I'd also point out with the funding issues that once again you're going to hear me talk about the census and how important that is, and how we promote this with our families to make sure every person is being counted because it's $1,800 per year times 10 years. If that person's missed out the census, that we miss that funding to prevent them or provide those services. In addition, I was made aware by Ann Smith that some of our funding is tied to SAFE, which is an internal revenue code tax return thing. So it's important for that, because we will be losing funding because people must not be doing that, even though we're providing the services. So just really important things going on. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Can you tell me how much does it cost for the families that are paying for preschool? What is the, like, a learning adventures? How much is the
That
fee? Okay.
So we did a market analysis. There was one programs
Mm-hmm.
and schools know that we raised that to still below the market value to these. Was a 3-hour delivery of the teacher and assistant. So 17 to 1. As we said, there's lunch programs at John Harris Study. And the only increase to the wait list, and we get enough on the wait list, we add students. Our previous, actually, our first location was that
Are we done?
That's a city system. But already done for the first Learning Adventures location in Harris. And really we're limited a bit by space because we don't have a ton of open classrooms. So we balance the community need with the space we have each location, locations and such. Nancy Hagan, she was over at Harris, probably in July. It's a pretty big wait list here. We'd love to have a classroom over at Harris. She really the chair, but we've got a classroom that fall. So really paying attention to the needs of the community and we will provide transportation. So we're the understand the families. It's a looking to provide transportation.
And it's Monday through Friday, right? I mean, it's Monday through Thursday, okay? Sure, because I'm thinking of, when my kids were younger, I want to say when they were 3-year-olds, they went Tuesday, Thursday, and then when they were 4-year-olds, they went Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So, and I know I paid more than $125 every 2 weeks. So, I mean, for the value of what you're getting, it was a great option. If you don't have a connection or aren't able to get in or afford even, there's many great private preschools too, but if you can't get into us, or I feel like we do provide a really good service and really good education that's very affordable.
Upon starting this last year, it's not to be competition to our private providers because they're fantastic.
Yeah. We need them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But for the fact of convenience, we're getting that we drive it second grade, fourth grade, that's really the need that we were trying to fill. Board committee reports. Mr. Tolkien, do you want to start first?
Sure. I still have not met for housing. She is still working on putting together a committee. The can't think of the committee, the Sports Authority, sorry, has not met. We're an off month, so I'll meet this month and the next coming weeks. But if I can, share just a little bit with my trip to DC, I'll make it real brief, and then I'll send each one of you a little bit more of a detail. Oh, I'm going.
No, we have plenty of time today, so don't feel like you have to. Yeah, get rushed.
Day one, 8:05 a.m.
Thanks, Carly.
Get going. I was fortunate enough to get elected we're in the Western region, and the Western region elected me to go and be on the nominating committee for the upcoming vice president. So it's a 2-year term. This was my second term. It's an interesting process. They take your phone away, and I thought that was more of a punishment, but years ago somebody leaked out who was elected, and the person found out in the elevator from somebody that leaked it. So we weren't allowed to have cell phones. So I did go through a little jonesing for that. It was fun to go through. We had 3 really good candidates, and it was fun to go through the process. And it was a good group of people. And I think at one point there was going to be one guy. At one point it was the other lady, and it came up to be Frank Henderson, who is in the school board of Kansas. That will be actually the president-elect. So that was my first day. The second day was the Equity Symposium. That was a great day. And then the next 2 days was the Advocacy Institute. And then yesterday, we went to the Capitol to meet with the senators and then an aide for Congressman Johnson. Everybody wore these cool little things, and I got a few extra. But it was neat to look, going through the halls of the Capitol, how many Red Stars there were. So it was fun to see that. Some of the topics: high school student reps to the school board. There's a number of school boards that do that. A couple of them are mandated by the state, so I'm not real hip on that. But I think it'd be something we could talk about. It would be interesting to have the input from students, and the stories that I've heard were pretty incredible, the insight that some of these kids had. It's no news, but it was mortifying watching the Juul and vaping videos on how big of an epidemic this is and how horrifying it is for kids. You'll see those pictures of kids in a hospital. There's people that make their own cartridges, and who knows what's in those, and it's really horrifying to see what damage was done to some of the kids. And for a short period, Juul would send somebody in to the schools to talk about the potential damages, but we end up actually promoting it and got more and more kids. So there's schools like in Baltimore that have detectors everywhere, outside the bathrooms, there's cameras. They're really cracking down on that. The big thing was the census, and they hammered. I went to 2 different breakouts for that, and it's a pretty big deal. People are afraid to come in and sign up. They don't know what the ramifications are. Apparently, census can't release any of that information for 72 years. So any information that we're seeing from census is, and I don't have any proof of that, the lawyer for the class told that and said he would send us information on ways we could probably step our game up. And I've got some ideas that I had to. Mental health, that was a huge issue. They were talking having separate mental health counselors, if not for schools, for the district, 1 or 2. But again, how do you pay for that? Over the lunch, we had a family. It was tear-jerking. You guys that know me, I cry over Kleenex commercials, so this one was a killer. But the mom was up with the daughter and son. The daughter had tried to commit suicide, and the son found her and saved her. And so he is now a junior in high school and developed an app called Not Okay app. And they'll send me some information on that. It's an app that if you're not feeling good about yourself or in a bad place, you push one button on your phone, it notifies 5 people that you've picked out that will call and just check on you. And it was an incredible story, and incredible that this kid could come up with this software. And it was amazing. The girl that attempted the suicide said she would have used that. She was just confused. She felt she just needed to not be there, and if there was someone right there to talk to, but there was something there. Have I taken up my time? I got a couple more to go. We went through the gender discussion, and the big picture is we have to protect the kids that identify with a different gender on their birth certificate, but we also have to be mindful of all the other students, meaning we need to educate all students. And so it doesn't matter if they're the gender that doesn't identify or the other kids, we need to keep everybody in mind. And there were some great buildings that they showed, some things that they did. I can go into that later. One that I won't go deep in because it got pretty hairy was anti-racist. We still got a long way to go, and they gave some unbelievable examples of things that are still going on. And if I can take personal privilege, my opinion was if we move on with the school of choice and continue down that road, we're really going to go backwards and continue segregation or restart segregation. So that's my 2 cents on that. Grants for tuition, that $4,000 that's forgiven for students that go to areas in need, that's up for refunding. And so when I got to visit with Senator Thune, I just brought up that that might be raised up a little bit. I think there's the opportunity to make it go to 8,000, but it needs to go where you need help. You know, we have not enough funding for special ed. We have trouble gaining teachers here for special ed. It'd be nice if we could bring people in and have some relief for their education or what areas that we need. I think that's it. There you go. Sorry, Brian.
Oh, that was a great report.
But it was a great conference, and again, some of the best stuff is visiting one-on-one with other school districts, let alone the speakers. So I felt it was well worthwhile, and I appreciate the opportunity to go. Thank you.
Okay. We had policy yesterday. We've got 6 policies that are going to be up for review, revise. Sorry. Nothing significant. Most of it's cleanup language and just clarifying language. So you guys can read through those when they're posted. And then calendar committee met on the 15th. And good discussion, looking at some different options for next year. We've got another meeting. There several questions were asked, and Dr. Gold actually followed up with an email shortly after the meeting to clarify some items for the committee. So some more discussion in the next meeting. And CAP committee, we met on the 3rd, and we're starting to look at Jefferson High School. I think they mentioned Ben Rifle. I think about it. We didn't start talking about that, but did start talking about Jefferson. And cash reporting.
Kate talked about calendar and policy, and so I'll just briefly talk about insurance. We met, just a few things, just a few comments. We have an increase of about 1% enrollment over last year. We're going to start looking at premiums for next year, coming up here at our next meeting. And year to date, kind of our consumption of benefits and stuff, we're at 91%, and at this time last year we were at 94%, so we're actually better than we were. Still have nothing meeting that stuff yet, a dollar amount, so we're still looking good with that as well. And really, I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but you know, typically the insurer or the company pays X amount, and then the employee pays. It's usually around 50-50, and we're looking at more like 60-40, where the school district is funding about 60% compared to the employee paying about 40. So from a market perspective, I feel like we're very competitive in what we have to offer as far as benefits for our staff. So that's about it for that.
Chamber, the new executive director was introduced at the meeting, so he is new to that, and his family will be here in May, first of finishing school. So I know he's looking at homes. I told him he should buy these for the school district, so I wanted that. Let's see, Sioux Prayer Leadership Council, the triage center was announced. That was the last big nugget. That's now taken on by a separate committee, partnership with Vera and Sanford, the city, towns. So now we're discussing kind of a process in how we should review what our next big chunk will be that we start evaluating. So that kind of going through the process of how we're going to bring things forward and how we will decide, is this what we want to focus on? So nothing as of yet, just going through the process and not yet moving into this. Some budget, we had an audit report, and we went over that at our school board meeting. So anything
Super. Well, thank you for the report today on our early childhood, and our early childhood committee met. So I'll just report back a few of those findings. Year to date, we have an allocation of our budget at about $3.3 million, and year to date we paid about $955,000 of that entire budget. Maybe you talked about the revenue sources in the overall budget before. Okay. And then just some interesting key indicators for the early childhood program, and maybe you covered that as well, where we're at. I'll let you know because it's kind of some good news to report. But of those that are required to go through some health screenings, we've had 86% get physicals, as well as 87% get dental exams of the students involved in the program. Our lunch count and snacks continue to be consistent. We do have some more parents that are getting fed, which just shows that we have some more parent involvement in the classroom, which would be a good for our key indicator. We also are at capacity. We're serving 414 students, and that's what we're allocated by the federal government. Speaking of which, we did apply for federal funding. That application is due March 1st. The total funding would be at about $2.6 million, and there again, our funded enrollment would be 414 students. Another key indicator that was really promising for the program is our monthly attendance. In December is at 94% for both AM and PM. And that is consistent with November, and October was at 95, and then September was at 96, so it went down a little bit. Some of that they attribute to when it's pulled out, the students just have other things going on besides school, but still overall the 94% attendance is really good. The other committee is our Education Foundation. There's just two pieces that are of significance to really talk about, and that's number one, the letter that we received And what we've talked about and will be doing is having a meeting with Dr. Macher, Anthony Kaiser, who is the current chair of the foundation, and then myself being the liaison between the two groups, as well as Allison, the executive director. We get together and talk in a smaller, more intimate group about the scope and the vision for that strategic plan, so that ultimately we might be able to help them with how best to proceed. Also, the teacher grants, we had 61 applicants from 31 schools or sites, and $100,000 worth of grant money to give out. Voting for those grants will be in February. Any questions? For the STEM, right? I talked the last time we got together, sort of what the bigger picture overview looks like for that, but it is a bit of a
Just a reminder to the public, to thousands of people watching. February 19th is our next last task force. So please attend the lunch or use the Let's Talk app to put in discussions out there that we want to make sure to step back. And then afterwards, we'll start the at least five meetings at the various middle schools to kind of go over with the community what those options are. Anything else for the body? Do you have a motion for adjournment? Second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. We are adjourned.
Social.
I'm kind of what it says. Oh, that's the foundation. That must be. Okay, gotcha. It wasn't really consistent.
Sign the right one. They're talking.
Okay. Let's see. Thank you. We would have pulled you by your scarf.
Yeah. Say something mean.
Call the meeting in order. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We didn't have anybody sign up to be for persons to address the board. We'll move on to approval of the minutes of the January 8th meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. No new conflicts of interest presented to the board. Item 7A through D, approval of consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On to the reports of the president.
Good afternoon, President Mickelson and members of the board. It's a pleasure to kick off this board meeting with our spring enrollment numbers, and we have some good news to share with you. So where we ended up with our head counts, you can see the numbers from 2019 versus this spring. So up 182 students, good percentage there, 8.5%. Looking at credits, you know, we've been trending, right? That we're always, seems like the last couple semesters, we've been up in head counts, but then just maybe tweaking, you know, just squeaking by with a little extra credits. But we had a good increase in credits as well, so we were happy to see that. And looking at the percentage of spring semester enrollments by student type, you can see where we're at there compared to last spring versus this spring. Just to kind of give you an idea. Where we saw a nice increase was our dual credit and our partnerships with our high schools, and I'm going to break that down in the next slide there. Any questions about the breakdown here as you're looking at those numbers? Okay. And so looking at our dual credit, concurrent, and then of course, Avera Academy and our Sanford Classroom to Careers. Again, you can see our total dual credit number there. In the Avera Academy and the Classroom to Careers, seems like just maybe a year ago we were having the discussion of, you know, missing our learners to leaders. So these have been good additions, and those students, I think, are getting a lot out of it, and it's a good pathway for them. And then we have 5 students out at McCrossin Boys Ranch taking our construction. That would be our general construction certificate classes, and then concurrent. So that would be those high school teachers are teaching our curriculum. And so we have a couple down at CTE. Yeah, so that's kind of spring enrollment in a nutshell. Not much more to say about it, but you have any questions?
No, just congratulations. That's obviously outstanding news when you see what's happening to the universities in our state and their enrollments and what you guys are doing. Obviously, you're being so responsive to students and businesses in our community. So because of that, you're being rewarded by the uptick in enrollment and credits. And I know it's frustrating to see this huge enrollment and not as many in credits, but thank you for the service you're providing our high school students as well that we oversee with the school district. So we appreciate that.
So the dual credit is part of that, right? They're part-time, but also just with our adult learner population. We just know that, and that's nationwide with adult learners. They tend to, right? We all have busy lives, and so they're taking classes and school part-time. So I think that's just a trend we're going to continue to see.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have a motion to approve the spring enrollment report?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
President Mickelson, members of the board, I'm Tracy Nolner, Executive Director of Student Affairs and Institutional Effectiveness. Always an honor to come and talk to you, especially when you have good news to report, and I think you're going to hear that in all three of the presentations today. Today I am going to talk to you about the employer survey. This is the 2019, which means the survey was conducted this summer and into this fall. We finally got all the results pulled together and wanted to do the report for you. This is a survey that we do every other year. We basically send this out to all the employers who have graduates of ours from the last 2 years that are either in field or in related field. So basically, when we do the graduate placement survey, I'm asking them, who's your supervisor? We try to send this directly to the supervisor as much as we can so we get exactly what's happening with that graduate and how they're performing. Our return rate is 40% for 2019, and that's been consistent with other years. And considering this kind of a survey, it reaches a point where I'm begging them to send me back a survey. And we do have employers who flat out will just send it back and say, we don't do these surveys. I am seeing that, although that may have been true in the past, I'm seeing some larger organizations now that are sending them back. I think partly because they need employees and they know we do a great job and they want us to know more about it. So I am seeing that I'm getting more of them that way than there was before. This is part of our key performance indicators. So this is one of the reasons why we do this survey. And we do have a goal set. There are 13 categories that are on this survey, and our goal is we always want to have an average score of 3 or higher on all of the categories. But we'd also like to have at least half of those categories be a 4 or higher. It's a really hard target to hit. And we'll talk about it a little bit more later, but we have in the past hit it, but there's some other good information that we gain besides that. Categories include things like written skills, work ethic, safety, and so forth. And the measures that we use in employer satisfaction directly relate to our student learning outcomes, so we can compare the two, so we can see, okay, we're thinking this is how well the students are doing in these outcomes, then we can see what employers say too, and we can see if they match. They provide us ratings in 2 different ways. What did they expect and what did they get? So I'm asking them to say, for a brand new employee just coming from Southeast Tech, what would you expect them to be able to do in this particular skill? And then what did you actually get when that employee started working for you? They do this on a rating scale of 1 to 5, 5 being excellent and 1 being unacceptable. So here's an example of one of the charts. We do a chart like this for all 13 categories. We also do this chart for every program. So not only do we get to see this as Southeast Tech altogether, but every program gets to see their graduates and what those employers are saying about their particular graduates. So if you look at 2019 at the top, and you can see all the other years are there. The ones that aren't marked are the years between, so 2017 is between 2015 and 2019 there. But you'll see we have 2 colors. The blue is the actual. What did you actually get in terms of oral skills of the student? The red is what did they expect. And you'll notice that for 2019, they got more than they expected, which is always what we're trying to achieve. Here's the results in terms of the KPI. We've always met that 3+. We've always done well that way. 39% of ours were at the 4+ range. We've met the 50% once. But in terms of what I'm really looking at, this is only one of the things that I'm interested in. I'm actually interested in looking a little bit deeper into those expectations and those actual values. So in terms of expectations, what I found interesting is that they were lower this year than they were in previous years. I think this is because we're in a tough economy, or in terms of employment. They're not finding a lot of people. So when they're looking at them, they may be saying, hey, we didn't know what we get, but boy, they did pretty good. You know, their expectations are a little bit less than when you have 6 or 8 people applying for your job, and then you're saying, okay, I think I'm going to get the best, and if I don't. So they expect a little bit more in that sense. So we did see that fall. On the other hand, in terms of actual performance, we saw the actual performance in these areas: oral skills, customer service, written skills, basic skills, and overall performance went up. And in some cases, when you see that 0.11 for customer service, that's a big increase from the previous year. Went down in only one area: equipment familiarity. That's a common one to see go up and down, because if we're not using the same equipment that the employer is using, they may rate that a little differently. We didn't see changes in those other ones. They were very, very close to the same as they were in the previous year. In this particular survey, though, what I was really looking at, we always look at the gap. We take the actual minus the expected. If that's a positive number, that means our graduate outperformed the expectation. If it's negative, that means we underperformed, or our graduates underperformed. In this particular case, on this particular survey, every single gap score was positive, which we have never had happen before. And so in each case, the actual performance of the graduate was higher than what they expected to receive. You can see those in the 2019 column going down, and we'll show you all the categories. Those are the first set of categories. Every one of them is above 0 or at 0. I consider 0 to at least be positive, and mathematicians will say, no, there's no sign with it, but I'm going to call it positive. And there's the other ones: team, technical, safety knowledge, computer literacy, work ethic, and so forth. Computer literacy, you'll see, is a positive 0.43. That is always a huge one. We always think our graduates are very, very computer literate. The technical skills, which is obviously one we really strive for, is a 0.17, which is huge. And you'll notice with work ethic, it was above the work ethic. And they always find graduates from Southeast Tech to have a high work ethic, and so that's positive to see as well. Overall performance was a 0.14 above, which is a huge positive gap score. Just to show it visually, I put it into a chart. A red box means that the performance was not up to par. A yellow means it was pretty much at 0, is exactly what they expected to get. A green means they were above what they expected. And we've never had as many areas reach that green as we did in 2019. Plus the yellow areas, no red areas this year in terms of that. So something we can be very proud about in terms of our graduates and their performance. We also ask employers to rate Southeast Tech in a number of areas to find out what they think about how we do what the Institute does as a whole. And so you'll see in this list of meets company needs, location, instructional quality, our equipment, our facilities, relationship, program offerings, and reputation. They're all great scores. The only 2 that fall below a 4, one is meet company needs. I can tell you right now, they likely don't think we meet their needs because we're not putting enough graduates up. And so we're not meeting their needs. In fact, many of them commented, I need more. The other one is equipment, and again, I think that often comes with, they'd like the equipment always to be up to date, and in some cases, we may not always be able to meet their desires, but also they'd like it to be their equipment, which isn't always a possibility. We also ask them to do one other thing. We ask them to rate us. It's a scale of A, B, C, the regular scale that you would see in any school, and then I changed it to percentages. This year we were at a 92.95%, which is the highest grade we've received. Always in the 92. I'd really like to hit that 93. We just about did it this time. But still, any change in that, and especially one that goes up, is something to celebrate. So overall, the results of the Employer Survey 2019 reaffirms that we have strong employer satisfaction. They love our graduates. There's some natural variation that can be attributed to those fluctuations. Of course, sometimes they're a little bit higher, a little bit lower, but when you see all of them above the expected performance, that really means something. And so they are definitely thinking and seeing our graduates as a positive for their company. What will we do next? Well, we'll celebrate. This is great. In fact, tomorrow I will give this report to all the employees at our monthly meeting. We'll continue to monitor employer satisfaction. We will continue to do this every 2 years, and we'll determine additional areas for potential improvement and focus. And with that, any questions?
It'd be great to incorporate those results into some quick visual aid to show potential students and students what a great value they're getting because of this and what they're bringing then once they are a graduate of the program or receiving a degree. Is there a question? I didn't see a question on there, but is there like a retention question? I was thinking for employers because that's what I've been hearing a lot at these sector breakfasts is the biggest issue, not from our students, but in general, employment is retention of employees. And I wondered if that would be a question to be added in 2021 to these employers of our graduates.
And just so you know, the graduates that we're surveying is the last 2 years of graduates. So some have only been there for a very short time, some in a long time.
So this isn't long term.
But they could answer the question in a long-term capacity and say, how do you rate or what do you see as terms of our graduates and retention of those employees? That'd be great. We did share this with marketing, the information. We actually have an external stakeholder relationships team. We shared it with that team. Marketing is on that team, and so I think they're looking at ways that they could share this information and get it out to the public in general, too.
Are there, to piggyback with the industry needs, so just a spot where you ask an open-ended question to the effect of, in your industry, what problems do you need students to solve? So if they're projecting ahead a little bit and in order that you can massage the curriculum to continue to meet those needs.
I would say that probably happens more in the advisory committees. So then, because it's more program to program specific. So in those meetings, they're asking those questions of those. One of the reasons I like to do this survey rather than just use advisory committees, which is what a lot of colleges will do, is they'll just use their advisory committee, give them all the information. Our employer base is so much larger than we could ever have in our advisory committees that they're only a small portion of the full number who could give us information about graduates. You're going to see in the other report that Paula Hawks will do as well that we're building more and more of those connections so we can ask those questions not just on the survey. We can ask these questions of employers at any time and get a wealth of information not just from advisory committee members, but from the employers at large. So it is an opportunity for us to do that.
No, it's that to be a real strength is your ability to be nimble and respond to the industry, like around here, or employees, if you want to call it that, and then how you adapt your curriculum. So congratulations.
Yeah, in fact, many of the certificate programs that we've added in recent years is exactly because of what you're saying, talking industry, and you're saying we need this. So,
yeah, I was just going to add, as we were out looking and meeting with maybe potential new industry partners, what a great testament to say, here's why we would love to have you help us with our Build Dakota scholarship, doing a partial, or here's why, we'd love to have you contribute to our foundation or whatever it may be, is because the people that we're currently working with are very satisfied with the results that they're getting, and we'd love to have, new businesses be able to participate in that way as well. So yeah, great report and great data to share. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Tracy. Do you have a motion to approve the employer survey report?
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
And this, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
This next report actually is a great follow-up to the one I just gave, because obviously we have to get those students who are graduating ready to go into the job market. And actually, we don't always have to work that hard to find them jobs, but we have cases where they do need some more support in getting that first job. So Paula Hawks is here to talk about our career services and what we offer those students.
Thank you, Paula.
Good afternoon. As Tracy said, I'm Paula Hawks. I am very happy to be here. I was asked by some folks at Southeast Tech to come in and talk to you about the career services and what I provide in that office. It's a huge office. Career services is gigantic. What would you say the size of my office is, Megan? Like 10 by 8? Yeah. Yeah. It's good. It's good. It does not speak to the number of services that I provide for our students at Southeast Tech and what we are able to help them with. Get that to go. There we go. So we at Southeast Tech have career services incorporated into our student success offices. So I'm also a student success advisor, so I have that direct contact and a little bit of teaching experience with those students as well. But every career center across the country has the opportunity to be a part of the National Association of Colleges and Employers, and we are NACE members. And NACE is the organization that sets the standards for our reporting when it comes to career services. And so as I talk about some of these things in our placement report, there are standards that we're meeting based on what they have set for us. And some of those mesh really well with what Tracy is collecting for data. And sometimes we're helping each other collect data. He's asking me if I've got results, I'm asking him if he's got results. And so we're combining those pieces of information from employers as well as from our students and what we're getting together. So our placement report is based on some of those stringent rules that the NACE sets for us. I also provide a variety of services through the Career Services Center, and I'll talk about some of those things specifically as I go through here. But Career Connections is our online job board. We have career fairs. I just had one today. It's been a very busy day for me today. And those are industry specific as well as wide reaching. We also have other services including resume writing, cover letters, mock interviews. I have a lot of students filtering through my office on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So, and then I'll provide you a little bit of an overview of the Build Dakota and what we've been working on this year and where we're headed with that. So Career Connections is that online job board. It's a free service that we provide to all of our industry partners, giving them an opportunity to post their jobs, get involved by looking at student resumes, making some connections and networking with our students. Right now we have 3,100 plus employers on our Career Connections website job board. Those are not obviously just from the Sioux Falls area. They're regional. Some of them are nationwide and some of them are global. We have a connection through Handshake and through Get Grads that allows us to have some of those employers from around the country put their jobs on our job board without actually having a connection to us, but they're connecting to our students through that network. We have 3,200 plus contacts in that database, so those are 3,200 individual people that I'm able to reach with the click of a button. And tell them about the great news about our employer survey and the great news about our students being placed in those things. Right now we have 937 job openings listed on our job site. That number continues to increase. When I first came on about a year and a half ago, there were about 750 jobs on the job board. They just keep going up and people keep calling and saying, we need grads, we need grads, we need grads, which is great news. I wish I had more grads to give them, and that's what we keep working for. 2,300 plus students and alumni have profiles on there. When a student or alumnus creates a profile on Career Connections, they can upload their resume. It puts them in direct line of sight of all of the employers that are out there looking for them. And they do often ask, can you send me resumes? Hey, go on to Career Connections and look at the resumes for yourself. I'd be happy to send them to you, but this way they can directly look at them. Career fairs, I just had one today. We had our engineering career fair for civil, land survey, architectural, and construction. It was very successful. We had about 3 more employers there this year than we did last year. It's a smaller group, and so bringing in those new employers and employers that I've never seen before who had never done a career fair. Silk Up Construction came today, was their very first career fair anywhere ever. Like they'd never done a career fair, the poor man. Had no idea what he was doing. I was trying to help him along. But we brought in all of those employers. They come and talk to the students. The students get to filter through. It's amazing to see the conversations that are happening. So we have 10 of those throughout the school year. Brings over 200 employers to the campus. They come on campus, they talk to the kids. Sometimes they do presentations. Sometimes it's simply just setting up a booth so kids can come and talk to them. I shouldn't say kids, students. Students can come and talk to them. Every program is involved. I have a couple that I need to get involved in a deeper way since they are coming to campus next fall. So vet tech and medical assisting as well as dental assisting, we're gonna get them involved in those career fairs as well. Like I said, very successful, but it's very busy for getting ready for all of those employers to come onto the campus. Other services that we provide, that I provide and our student success advisors help with, resume writing. In preparation for the career fair today, I reviewed 17 resumes yesterday. And then 5 more people sent me their resume this morning and were like, oh, can you get it to me before the career fair? Sure, I can do that. And so that word is getting out that that's a service that we provide, and more students are taking advantage of that, which I am appreciative of. There's a lot of different ideas about what a resume should look like, and I'm trying to help these students make their resume look the most professional and the most acceptable for today's hiring crowd. So we're working on that. Cover letters, they don't understand the importance of a cover letter. And so I'm working towards helping them understand why that's important and why it sets them apart, helping them learn how to write that and contribute to their own professional development in that way. Mock interviews, we do mock interviews. Some of our programs at Southeast Tech require a mock interview. More and more students are coming in and doing mock interviews because more and more students have never had jobs before. It's alarming to me to see how many students come to us and have never had even a part-time job and have absolutely no idea how to conduct themselves in an interview. So we're working on that as well. I did hold several lunch and learn events last fall, and we'll hold some more this spring where students can come in for a workshop for these 3 different areas. If they don't want to come to me individually for whatever reason, they can come to a lunch and learn and get those helpful points and ask those questions that they have directly to me. And then Build Dakota. Build Dakota pretty much encompasses my spring semester for the months of January, February, and into March. This program has been phenomenal. Last year, we had 98 students sponsored with 30 other students who had, with 30 sponsors. We also had a number of students that were given full rides without a sponsor. They still have the responsibility to work in South Dakota for 3 years. However, they didn't have a direct sponsor contributing to their scholarship. This year, however, we have increased the number of sponsors. Right now, I have, that number is off. We have 43 confirmed potential sponsors for 2020, 2021. And the potential with those 43 sponsors is 130 plus sponsored students for scholarships. That's phenomenal. The retention rate is increasing and getting better. We have more and more students who are coming to tech school and coming to Southeast Tech because of this program, giving them an opportunity to be able to afford it. And so it's just been a phenomenal opportunity for us, a phenomenal opportunity for them, and something I'm really excited to be a part of. It's kind of the down and dirty nitty gritty of career services. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
How many other staff work with you to do any of the services that you provide?
Me, myself, and I.
That's what it sounded like, and that's why I was just making sure,
All 3
because
of
in
us.
the 10x8 office, so I was like, because we're doing all the resumes and everything, so.
So we have 6 student success advisors at Southeast Tech, and all of us are willing and able to review resumes and look at cover letters and do mock interviews. A lot of times they filter those to me simply because of my background and my experience and my expertise in that area. But any one of them is capable of doing that. Yeah.
Well, good job. Thank you for all the work. The Build Dakota Scholarship is so important with the rising tuition costs we see and so forth. So it's so helpful to the students.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. Thank you very much.
Do you have a motion to approve the career services?
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those inside, motion carries. Thank you, Paula. Last report. Update.
Good afternoon, President Mickelson, board members. First, I want to say thank you again to all the presenters here. Paula does a great job. It's a critically important support service that she is providing to our students, and we have some outstanding employment numbers as a result of not only the quality of the programs, but the connections that we make with our employers. And I think Paula has worked hard to increase that, and along with the rest of our campus, I think, in that outreach. Also nice to hear the news from Tracy in terms of his employer survey results, and that a trend that's heading in the right direction.
keep that moving forward. And last but not least, certainly Megan's numbers on enrollment are incredibly important for us as we kind of chart the future in terms of potential new programming and all of the connections that have been built with industry and the outcomes of that also helping to support our enrollment growth. So thank you to, I say this a lot on campus, to our admissions staff and student success and all of the faculty that spend a great deal of time outside of normal duties with AARs, with recruiting events. All of those things contribute. There was another group, though, I wanted to just mention on campus that does an outstanding job, gets little attention, but they're just as important in terms of a contributor, and that's our custodians on campus. I was thinking back in the summer, they do an outstanding job keeping the campus looking clean, and I often get comments on how nice the buildings are maintained, and we are fortunate from the state, from all of the support that we get from our industry partners, but custodians are there day and night, making certain that our students have a positive environment and our staff have a positive environment to work in. So definitely want to thank them too for all the good work there. My update is on the legislative update. So there are a couple of bills that we are following closely this legislative session. The first is House Bill 1083. That is the big policy proposal that the Tech Board has made to the state legislature, and that's the name change bill. So last week, the bill passed unanimously through the House Education Committee, which was very nice to see. Yesterday, it went to the House floor. There was discussion, and it passed, but it passed on a 45-25 vote. So there were more concerns, I guess, in terms of listening to the discussion and the vote. The conversations were still very positive about technical education in the state of South Dakota. More of the no votes, I would say, were centered on the old adage, if it ain't broke, you don't need to fix it kind of thing. So I think there was questions about whether or not a name change was really needed if our enrollment is doing as well as it is, and we're ranked nationally as the top two-year system in the country. Individually, campuses receive awards, Southeast Tech among them. So I think, well, that's perhaps a question that can be raised. It's also easily answered when you think about we are one of two states in the country that call our colleges an institute, and I still think that causes some confusion to many parents and others. And although our enrollment's doing well, as you saw, we still can do better. And I think with the name change, we are, in fact, an accredited college. We accept credits into Southeast Tech. Our credits transfer out of Southeast Tech. And we are everywhere considered to be a college, but our name does not reflect that. So I think it's an important piece of legislation, and I hope that it's going next to the Senate floor, and we're hoping that we get strong support. And on the House Education Committee, we did receive strong industry support. So we'll see how that moves forward. There's also some dual credit legislation that was just introduced at the end of last week. And this is impactful not only to Southeast Tech, but I think the Sioux Falls School District. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. SB 142 would limit the program, the dual credit program, to only general education courses. SB 143 would require students who fail or drop courses to reimburse the state. And SB 144 would prevent students who fail or drop courses from taking future courses. And a number of concerns have been raised, first and foremost, by limiting it, dual credit program, to only general education courses. We feel that we are restricting access to CTE courses, the CNA courses that we are providing that provide a basic foundation for many of our students going on into nursing and other healthcare professions, are the construction certificates that were recently added with the help of AGC and Sioux Falls Home Builders. Those would no longer be eligible for funding. So there are a number of of courses, I think, that we are already offering, and courses that we hope to expand and offer more of in the trades programming area, in addition to general education courses that we feel by limiting that legislation, limiting it to only dual credit programs is really restricting access to dual credit. And it's impactful, and if you remember back to some of the conversations, I think, when we had earlier, I don't remember if it was October, the board report, or the November board report, where we were talking about the state, the study that the state conducted on dual credit, and a number of students that would be impacted by the change in legislation would be those individuals least likely to be able to afford dual credit. And if that program is taken away, again, I think it's restricting access to individuals from lower socioeconomic backgrounds and a segment of the population with lower tendencies already to not be taking those courses. So we hope that with industry support, we can muster some strong voices in opposition to the proposed legislation. And there is, at least as of today, we did not have any hearing dates yet for that legislation, so we'll follow that closely. The last piece of legislation was something that came up last year. It's reemerged this year, and it's House Bill 1069. It would authorize veterans to attend courses offered at Technical Institute without tuition payments. And I think the Technical Ed Board is looking at that as essentially in all of the campuses as somewhat of an unfunded mandate. So while we would love to support that, we'd also like to see the state include some tuition dollars. As lean as we're operating, that would help immensely, you know, with that type of legislation. So we're hoping that potentially might be there in the future as well. The last point I guess I was going to mention, we were also the state Technical Institute presidents, we were all present with the joint committee on appropriations and our annual budget proposal to the state, and had a very good conversation. Nick Wendell, our executive director, did a very nice job, you know, outlining what our ask is essentially in terms of a 2% increase in the per student allocation, an increase in the tuition buy down to try to keep tuition lower. Unfortunately, as talked before, I think the governor's tentative FY21 budget does not include funding for those initiatives, so that's not looking very promising. While the committee members were supportive, I think the one hope we have, probably fingers crossed here, but they asked a lot of questions about equipment and the equipment needs, and we have a $3 million equipment ask between the 4 technical institutes, and certainly Southeast Tech is a big part of that, because vet tech is an expensive program to bring forward, dental assisting another expensive program to bring forward, and so any assistance we can get from the state in those programs would be greatly appreciated. We're hoping that there might be some one-time money at the end of the session that we're lobbying for. So all in all, you know, pretty positive though report from the state legislature, as I think they very much appreciate the good work that's being done in all of the technical institutes, and in meeting, frankly, might be the #1 challenge in the state, and that is the skilled workforce shortage that we face across the state. So with that report, I guess I will wrap it up, and any questions, or try to answer any questions or comments.
Thank you. Sounds like they're leaving you pretty much alone, so that's good, except for the 142 maybe.
Right, yeah, well, we'll see. We'll watch
There's only
it.
one sponsor, it looked like. Is that correct?
At this point, yeah, there's only one legislator that has signed on, but well, we're hoping, we had a phone conference this morning, and what I have heard, at least what was discussed, was that both the State Technical Board and the Board of Regents would be in opposition to the proposed legislation. So, thank you.
Thank you. No action needed, so just, any more information or anything about for the board? Seeing none, do you have a motion for adjournment?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you.